Hello viewers, today let us see how ecology influences development. In this chapter, we are going to see various issues related with ecology. We are going to see what is ecology first, and we are going to see the various theories or put forward by ecological psychologists in order to understand human behavior within the context of the environment. To begin with, what is ecology? Ecology is the study of interrelationships between living things and their non-living environment. So, actually the environment consists of two components. One is the abiotic component and the second one is the biotic component. Abiotic component consists of all the non-living things like the soil on earth, water, air and other things. But whereas biotic component consists of all the living things on this earth like animals, plants, birds and so on. So, in ecological psychology, they try to understand how the biotic system has an influence on the non-biotic or abiotic system and how the abiotic in fact tries to influence the biotic component. Ecology can actually be studied at various organization levels. Level 1 is population, the second level is communities, third is ecosystems, and it can also be studied with respect to the biosphere. Populations means all members of a single species living in a given time and place. And under ecosystem comes all the interacting populations in a given time and space. So, in populations we will be only dealing with that particular population, but in ecosystem all the various populations that are interacting with each other will be considered at one point of time. And going on to communities, communities is another ecosystem where all the organisms and their non-living environment in a defined area is considered as a community. So, all the organizations and their non-living environment comes under what we call as community. Going on to biosphere, here in biosphere all life on earth comes into consideration. So, ecology is studied from all these different organizational perspectives. The basic idea is why or how ecology has developed is as a reaction to psychological theories where psychologists try to emphasize or overemphasize according to them on the individual. And ecology has also been developed in environmental psychology as a reaction to sociologists who also place lot of emphasis on the individual, although they are studying the whole social context. So, as a response to that, ecology today considers the interaction between both the individuals and also the environment. So, ecology, let us see how this perspective affects the development. So, development within the context of ecology is considered as the person's ability to develop a concept of his ecological environment and the kind of relationship that this person has with that ecological environment, and apart from that this person's ability to sustain, to alter that environment. And ecological psychologists also talk about what they call as ecological identity. Ecological identity refers to all the different ways people construe themselves in relationship to the earth as manifested in their personality, in their values, in their self-esteem, in their beliefs, so on and so forth. According to Thomas Shaw, the interpretation of life experiences transcends social and cultural interactions in ecological identity. It also includes a person's connection to earth, perception of the ecosystem, and also direct experience of nature. Apart from that, Chawla and others have pointed out that ecological identity also includes children's contact with nature through tending gardens, playing in parks, and also being in spaces with trees, which is seen as significant predictors of positive adult beliefs about the benefits of nature. So, in ecology and its impact on development, here all the theories are framed in such a manner that it is not only the individual who is given importance, but the individual is given value in the context of the environment. Now, let us see how development is viewed in ecology. Many of the explanations in ecology regarding the development of the individual are based on what they call as boundaries. So, from childhood to adulthood, beginning in childhood, the boundary around the person is just the family, or it is only with the family that the person is interacting with. But as the child grows up, the child is exposed to the school environment. So, now his boundary not only includes the family, but also the school. As a child enters college, there are more and more aspects of the social world that the child or the adolescent is interacting with, and all that is going to have an impact on the development of this individual. And when as the child grows further, and when the child enters or adolescent enters the state of adulthood, then even more boundaries are added, like the general cultural boundaries, religious boundaries, and also the state or region in which the person is living starts to have an impact. During childhood, the country is not having any kind of direct impact on the child, but as a person grows up, the state in which the person is growing up and also the country in which the person is growing up starts to interact with the person in more direct ways and affects the development of the individual. So, apart from this, there will be a point of time the whole environment, or rather the whole world, starts to have an influence on the development of the individual, more so today in this what we call as a world becoming a small village. Because of the rapid expansion of scientific and technological innovations, today we are exposed to events and happenings that happen in far away places, and we are also trying to interact with people from very far regions. So, that is why the boundaries are expanding, ever expanding in the present day context compared with earlier generations. So, the impact on development is also going to change, and in these the conception of development according to ecological model has several layers or several boundaries in it. Let us understand more about the conceptual model of development according to ecology by looking at, in this slide you can see that the child is in center of this figure, and there are so many boundaries around this child. The first one is the family, or which is called as microsystem, and this microsystem, which includes family, community, then religious groups, and also the school and child care and other systems that the child is going to interact with form the microsystem, and the individual's personality and attitudes and also the cultural kind of training, all this happens within this microsystem. But gradually these boundaries begin adding up. What we call as mesosystem adds on to the microsystem as the child grows up, and the exosystem also has an impact, which consists of friends, neighbors, the legal services, such diverse areas like social services, and also mass media. All this is also going to have an impact, but it is not within the immediate boundary, but at a farther space from the individual, because the influence is also going to be not direct, but indirect influence will be there on the individual. So, after exosystem, it is the macro system that they project, and also they talk about chronosystem, which means patterning of environmental events and transitions over the child's life courses. So, chronosystem more or less represents the development in various periods of time, which also includes the various kinds of systems that impact on the individual. Let us go into the details of these various systems. Microsystem, what do they mean? Within this system, the student or child has direct interaction with parents, teachers, peers and others, say in the immediate family members, other family members like siblings and also grandparents. So, mesosystem consists of the influences that these people have on the child. Going on to mesosystem, this system involves linkages between microsystems such as family and school, and relationship between the child and peers. So, it is going to have an interactive effect between the child and the microsystem. So, that is called as the mesosystem. Coming on to exosystem, this system works when settings in which the child does not have an active role influences the student's experiences. That is, indirect aspects in the environment, when they have an impact on the child, that is when the exosystem has come into effect. For example, because of certain, say there is sudden war, and because of that war there are depletion in resources, and the child does not get to enjoy outings or does not have any holidays outside the home because of the war condition, or because of the war condition there are lesser food resources that are available. So, the child gets to eat less food and also low quality food, and the child's school, for example, has been closed for a long period of time because of war is something that is not directly in the life of the child, but because of the war condition and the changes that it brings is affecting the child's life. So, that comes under what we call as exosystem. Or the cultural influences or religious beliefs, certain religious beliefs impacting on the child, all come under exosystem. Going on to macrosystem, this system involves the broader culture in which students and teachers live. So, culture and such things come under macrosystem, and certainly culture has an impact on the personality, attitudes and values of the child, but however it is does not have an immediate effect on the child, but however it certainly has a very important influence on development. Mostly culture influences through parents, through teachers and through other systems that are more closer to the child. Going on to the last one, that is the chronosystem, it is the socio-historical conditions of a student's development. So, what kind of changes are there in the society at that time when this child is leading its life? So, previous example, declaring of war. Not all people during their childhood faced war. It might be only that certain generation or group of people or group of children have to be exposed to war. So, that is comes under chronosystem, because at that period of time when they are children, though that year, particular year, there is a war. So, that comes under chronosystem because it certainly is a socio-historical condition. So, all these systems, the microsystem, the mesosystem, the exosystem, macrosystem and the chronosystem are going to have an impact on the development of the child. So, you can see in this ecology model, all aspects of the child are considered by trying to understand what are the influences on development. Certainly, it is a development over what psychologists try to understand about the individual, and also what sociologists try to understand about the individual, and also what other behavioral scientists try to understand about the world, because here in this model we have seen an all inclusive effects on the individual. But how proceeding further into trying to understand which system has what kind of an effect, theoretically this model is very rich, but how far we will be able to make meaningful conclusions about it, or how far we are going to make meaningful predictions and generalizations from this theory remains to be seen. However, parents and teachers are actively trying to understand today to identify what helps the child's growth and what hampers the development of children, keeping in mind all these different systems. So, today the understanding of development is holistic rather than in a piecemeal fashion. Let us see each of these systems in more detail and discuss how they are going to impact development. Let us begin with the microsystem. In the microsystem, it is especially the interaction that the child will have with the parents. So, we have seen the influence that caregivers have, or the impact that caregivers have on development of the child. Especially Bowley has pointed out that if the caregiver or the parent, either of them, if they show lot of love and affection towards the child, then the child is going to develop in a proper manner by developing required amounts of self-esteem, developing trust, so that the child is able to feel that the caregiver is loving and affectionate, and when in times of need the child can look to the caregiver for support and security. So, at the microsystem, it is very important that things happen properly, because psychologists have emphasized time and again that childhood experiences are going to have an impact on the overall development of the person. So, if everything goes as planned, and if in the microsystem the parents and other close family members react positively and help in the proper training and development of the child, then the child will develop in the right manner. Otherwise, it might lead to some dysfunctions. Dysfunction happens when the child is not trained properly or is not trained at all in a particular important life skill. So, dysfunction happens when things do not happen properly, or things do not go properly in the microsystem level. So, if dysfunction happens, then the child's personality and development is going to be affected adversely. On the other hand, if everything goes well in the microsystem, the child is had enough exposure with all the influential members, the child is positively regarded by the members in the microsystem, then the child is going to be developing what we call as competence. So, in competence, it includes acquisition and development of knowledge, skill or abilities that are going to help the child to learn things at school, to master many skills in his life, and to achieve success in his or her life. So, at the microsystem level, it has such an influence that if everything goes on properly, then the child is going to become competent, otherwise the child is going to become dysfunctional. Because dysfunction is happening, ecologists have tried to understand why it has occurred, what are the causes for this dysfunction, and they term as what they call as proximal processes. So, is there some interruption in the proximal process that has led to this dysfunction, is the question that they attempt to answer. And according to them, there are many variables that are going to have an effect on the proximal process, like the intensity, like how deeply is the distraction, or the duration, to what extent there is this disruption in their proximal process that has led to the dysfunction. And they are also going to see the timing, that is, during what age or what period of development did this disruption take place. For example, if for some reason the child has been hospitalized just before the child is learning or the baby is learning to walk and stand, because of that period of hospitalization and or illness, the child may not have developed walking skills on time. So, the point or the time during which this disruption in the proximal process has happened is also going to have an influence on the development of the child. Apart from that, other issues that they try to understand is the frequency, that is, how often is the child exposed to these factors that are disruptive or that have had a negative influence on development. So, how frequently is it? For example, the same taking the same case, how frequently has the child been hospitalized? Certainly, the frequency, if the frequency is more, then naturally the child is not given an opportunity to learn all the required skills and attain competency, and because of that reason it is going to result in what they call as dysfunction. Now, let us see how the exosystem and what happens during the exosystem is going to have an effect on the development. So, exosystem includes the surroundings of the child, say the friends for example. So, if the child is exposed to enough friendships, then only the child is going to learn what we call as social skills that are very important for the growth and development of the child. And the child is also going to learn some communicative skills which are so very essential for any success in any kind of job later, or even to have a successful and meaningful relationship in life. So, if the child for some reason is not given an opportunity to interact with peers of his age or some friends is not for some reason sent to an educational institution, then certainly there is going to be an impact on the proper development of the child. So, certainly the ecosystem is going to have an impact on the child if it is not properly, if the situation is not helpful for proper growth of the child, then certainly development is hampered. Going on to the next system, that is the macro system. Here the other environmental conditions are going to have an impact on the development of the child. For example, the office situation or the work situation or the parent. So, if because of the job requirements, if suppose the parent has to be absent from home for prolonged duration and also for long periods of time and frequently, then also it is going to have an impact on the proper development of the child. And also because of certain cultural practices, say for example, the child is not sent to school, or the child is not allowed to have social interaction with others, or the child because of some cultural or religious restrictions on part of the parents is not able to lead a happy and healthy childhood, because childhood requires lot of joy and enjoyment and social interaction with others. If that is not provided, then it is going to hamper the adult functioning of the child. Similarly, the chrono system also is going to have an impact, as we have discussed earlier. If there is a war, that is going to affect the individual. So, now let us see how these ecologists try to help people when there is some kind of disruptive development in their behavior. So, they try to understand the behavioral problems in context with the other systems that are existing around the individual. For example, if the child is, or if the adult is not able to have meaningful sustaining relationships, then these ecological psychologists, they try to analyze the from the level of the microsystem of this person. So, they are going to go back to the childhood and explore the impact of the microsystem on this person. They are going to analyze the kind of relationship that this person had with their parents. They are going to analyze what kind of relationship that they had, or what kind of exposure that this person has with their friends, so on and so forth. So, here behavior is modified keeping in view all the conditions that are going to have an impact on the development of the child.